This episode of What the Finance is brought to you by Westpac. This podcast contains general advice only. It does not take into account your personal circumstances. If you want to explore further, consider seeking appropriate professional advice. From Mamma Mia, welcome to What the Finance. It's time to get good with money. I'm Melissa Brown, author of money and business books you'll actually want to read, including Unfuck Your Finances, Entrepreneur and Financial Educator.
And I'm Pallavi Sharda, actress, budding author, advocate, and the person that will be holding or maybe clutching your hand during this financial journey.
So Pallavi, what's your thinking on property after last week's chat?
Okay, so I decided to change my approach a little bit because obviously I was doing it back to front and shortlisting all my dream properties and then calling up a bank and being like, please lend me X amount of money. And I actually took my accountant's advice and your advice and I spoke to a number of mortgage brokers who really broke it down for me. You know, broker is the right word because they were like, you're doing this the wrong way around. And obviously the challenges that come with being an actor and someone who's a contract worker were sort of top of the mind for them. And really it was just good to understand the reality of the situation and knowing that in a post-COVID world, there would be challenges to home loan approval, particularly when I was an artist. Even though I was like, shall I send you my press pack? And they were like, no, the banks are not going to care about the fact that you've been on the front of a magazine. That's not going to pay a mortgage. So it was a really good eye-opener. And I think I've selected a couple of mortgage brokers that I'd like to keep talking to. And just be a bit more open-minded about the process and perhaps less emotional in general when I'm thinking of buying a house.
I love that. Knowledge is power, and particularly if you're a contractor. It's so important to do that homework. You big gold star.
Great. Yay.
So this episode is an interesting one. We're going to be delving into the world of health, wellness and insurance. There's no doubt that insurance can be an integral part of life, but choosing the right cover and not overpaying for the benefits you don't use is worth a closer look. We're also going to look at health and particularly at the wellness trend and to ask the question, are you feeling good about yourself because you're not buying stuff, but you're still spending all your money on wellness experiences that are leaving you broke?
I have private health insurance. I came from a medical family, so they instilled the need for private health insurance in me from when I was young. It feels like so much out of my bank account every month because I rarely use it.
I have health insurance and probably should know what level I have, but I have no idea.
I don't have health insurance directly, but perks of being a uni student is you can actually stay on your parents' health insurance. So I'm on my dad's health insurance still.
I don't have health insurance because last year my mum came to me and she said that I was too old to be on the family plan and was no longer a student. And she told me how much it cost and I am way too tight, so I said no.
But let's start with the perhaps least sexy part of today, insurance. So when it comes to insurance, what do you understand that's important when it comes to insurance, Pallavi? And what's some things that you're like, these are back burner insurances that I really don't need?
Yeah, I think for me, given how transient and sort of travel heavy my life has been, travel insurance has been such a big part of what I do. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever really got it right. I've sort of had the struggle of never knowing where my home base is, and so many travel insurances have caveats around that and, you know, have to leave from the same port, come back to the same port. So I feel like I've actually spent a lot of money on travel insurance where if push came to shove, wouldn't actually be places that I could claim from or could turn around and say, oh, actually, you haven't fulfilled these obligations because I've never found the package that makes sense for me. But yet the mentality that I can't travel without travel insurance has caused me to spend regardless as sort of, you know, this mental thing of I'm covered. So that's sort of been an ongoing topic. Obviously, again, COVID meant that hasn't been an issue, but I'm about to leave to shoot in Canada. And I'm wondering the same thing, like how do I go about doing this, or do I get a yearly cover that covers me all around the world? The flip side to that is not knowing. I've continued to pay for private health insurance in Australia the whole time that I've been away. And that's been this idea of let me just be covered if something were to happen when I'm in Australia. But the reality is for the last few years I was only here a couple of months of the year. So a lot of extra expenses there.
And it's tricky because when it comes to private health insurance, if you're over 30 and you stop it for a while, then there's that annual loading that gets added in Australia. So sometimes it may be worth either talking to your private health insurance provider and finding out if you can pause it without that loading, or making that decision, I'm going to drop it to basic cover and pay because either I can come back and get treatment, or it's going to avoid that loading that I'm going to pay for the rest of my life if I'm intending to come back to Australia at some point.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had no idea about the loading and I've just crossed that threshold. So thank God that I hadn't stopped it. Yeah, and another thing which I didn't realise was even the way that they calculate calendar years. So I might have been paying from sort of July to August the next year, but actually my insurance rolled over December, January every year. And for me, there was sort of this mental block around the lack of parity there. And I was like, am I somehow paying more than what I'm actually paying for, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. And it's why insurance is something where you want to read the fine print. You want to potentially, in some cases, speak to an insurance broker. So just like there are mortgaging brokers, there are insurance brokers who are experts in finding the right policy for you, particularly if you're in business. That's a really important one. But let's look at the different types of insurance you might have. So you mentioned travel and travel insurance. There's also income protection insurance, which if you're a contractor, you don't have sickness benefits. So that can be something that is worthwhile, particularly if you are paying for rent, not living at home, if you have some sort of debt. Asking the question, how am I going to pay for that if I was to lose that job or that income, is a really important one. There's car insurance, home and content insurance, business insurance, life, trauma, TPD, pet. Like there's so many insurances.
It's pretty overwhelming.
Yeah. So it's picking and choosing the ones that are right for you, and also being super aware that just because you don't think you need it now doesn't mean it's not the right time to get it. Life insurance is a great one for that. So, and I know we discussed this briefly in the super episode, that if you're young, you have to opt in to life insurance. And the problem with that is the older you get, the more we break down. And if you've broken down and you go to get life insurance, or if you go to up your cover or increase the amount of life insurance you want, your insurance provider might say, you know what, we'll cover you, but not for that part that you broke down, or we'll cover you, but not for the next 12 months or 2 years for that thing, or we'll cover you, but it's going to cost an extra 50% because you've suffered from that condition. So having insurance young and then paying it consistently can be a great way to avoid you overpaying for it or not being entitled to it later. Same for if you're young and you enter the police force later or something like that. The fact that you had that cover is really important.
So life insurance, does that necessarily come as part of your super package, or is this something you could also take out separately?
You can have it separately. So a lot of the time it's cheaper inside your super fund, and your super fund gets a tax deduction for it. And because they bulk buy life insurance, that's often why it's cheaper. But you might choose to also have it outside. For example, I'm in business with someone in a preschool and we have life insurance on each other because if something was to happen to one another, we want to be able to afford to buy the family out, for example. So it's giving those considerations to how much cover, who do I want cover on? Because you might not have realised that. What do you mean I can have life insurance on a business partner? But you can. So it's realising what cover do I want? Where do I want it? Do I want it in super or outside super? And then how much do I want? And often the how much is, it might simply be to cover my debt or it might cover my mortgage. There's lots of calculators online to help you figure that out.
So for someone like myself, you know, I've always, as I said, looked at the travel insurance. I've looked at private health insurance in Australia because those two seemed obvious and necessary in the present day. Mm-hmm. If I'm thinking of the future, we're looking at things like income protection insurance and life insurance on top of that.
Yeah. So your life insurance, you might just check your super fund has it and that it's a level that you're comfortable with. And if it's not, you might increase the cover. So you apply to increase it and so you have more inside the fund. Income protection insurance, some people have that inside their super fund. but you actually get a tax deduction for it outside the super fund. So that can be a much better place to hold it if you can afford it cash flow wise. And certainly for you as a contractor. And for anyone where, someone might say, but I have sick days, I'm entitled to those. But what if I, God forbid, got a serious injury and couldn't work for 6 months? Would my sick leave cover me for that long? And if it wouldn't, what debt do I have and could I afford to pay for it? So you can, when you get things like insurance protection or income protection, you can opt in when it's going to kick in. So it can mean that it's a lot cheaper because you might say, you know what, I'm really comfortable that I can cover it for 2 months. But if I got sick beyond that, I'm in real strife. So I'm not going to have my income protection kick in until after 60 days. That means the policy's cheaper and I still get to access that protection that I need.
Okay, that's really handy, especially in the world of a pandemic when the arts industries are dwindling.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever gone to buy a fridge or a laptop and they've said, do you want insurance?
Yeah, that happened to me very recently. I bought a fridge last month, actually. And the laptop, always, every time I go to buy any electronics, the insurance question always gets me.
Yeah, it's called warranty, but essentially it's insurance. Did you buy it?
No, I didn't, because I just went, you're just trying to upsell something, and I got really annoyed by it. But actually in the past, I've always regretted not buying it. And yet mentally, when it goes to the day of purchase, I won't do it. And I'll retroactively try and do it. And they'll say, no, you can't now.
They won't let you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never bought it. I know that's often where they'll make a lot of their profit is in that warranty or that insurance on it. So it's not something I personally have ever bought, except interestingly, there is Apple Care. They get me because I just am worried that it's going to bust or I'm going to crack the screen.
I've never done the Apple Care and I always regret it. I walk out of the shop and I go, I know it, I should have done it, because every time I stuff my phone up or my computer up, the first question they say is, did you purchase Apple Care? And I'm like, no, because I thought you were trying to make some money off me.
And it's important to understand they are.
Yes.
So do you need it? And if you don't, what are you going to do? And maybe you don't purchase it, but you just make sure that your buffer account is your Apple Care. Your buffer account is if the fridge dies early. Your buffer account is if your laptop dies early. So if you've got that buffer, you suddenly don't need all those little sneaky extra warranties because you kind of got that money sitting there.
So you're saying in my general accounting, I should have a space there for all of these life contingencies?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of having a bank account that I call my buffer account or my life happens account or the oh fuck account, where I have up to 3 months worth of expenses sitting there so that if life happens, if my car dies, because we can be saving and we can be really good creating this life that we want to design, and then life happens. If we have that buffer account, then we don't need income protection insurance from day one. We don't need these extra warranties. We don't need the credit card because we've got that money there. And interestingly, that's a strategy for health insurance I've seen used as well. So pre-30, I didn't pay for private health insurance. I paid money into a buffer account so that if something went wrong, that was the money that I would use, knowing I didn't have private health insurance. And interestingly, just before I turned 30, it's like my body knew that the loading was coming, snapped the tendon in my ankle. And I was playing state netball at the time. I had to get it right. Cost 10 grand back in the day. Cleared out that account, that money that I had sitting there. So that from that point, I went, okay, from now on, I want to avoid the loading and I'll get private health insurance.
Did you ever do a cost-benefit analysis of whether it would have been better for you to have had the health insurance instead of the buffer account?
If I hadn't have had that super expensive operation, I was break even. I worked out. Because I didn't have it for 12 years and I'd paid it into that account, I basically sucked the bank account dry, but I was only putting into it what the private health insurance would have cost.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
So if you're not a klutz,
you might end up on top.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be right back, but first a message from our sponsor, Westpac. When it comes to your health, it's important to get it right. So when a serious illness or injury occurs, it's helpful to have a clear understanding of your finances. Westpac's Serious Injury or Illness Support Hub can help. It includes useful videos, guides and tools to help you feel financially confident, supported and empowered so you can focus on your recovery. And if things are looking up and you're looking forward to the arrival of your baby, Westpac can help there too, to help you better understand your financial options. Head to westpac.com.au/whatthefinance to find free resources to help prepare for some of life's big moments.
Private health insurance, is it worth it? What do you think?
I get really confused by this every time I go to the doctor or the physio or anywhere. And I've been doing a lot of checkups recently. You know, I had an iron infusion the other day, for example, which was $250 out of pocket. And I don't think my health insurance covered that. And, you know, Medicare also didn't cover it. So it was a strange one where I was like, I think Medicare gave me a slight rebate back. But I was like, what was the point when I actually needed to spend a big chunk of money? You know, my health insurance provider hasn't done anything. All it does is it maybe swipes. I get a pair of optical lenses and, you know, it doesn't actually, you know, all of the things that are actually quite low cost overall. And because we were prepping to do this episode, I went into my private health insurance to have a look at what I was paying monthly. And I went, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You know, I don't think I'm actually reaping the reward for how much I'm paying monthly. So I think, you know, I'm preempting, but perhaps my exercise will be really to do that breakdown and figure out where I've needed it as opposed to where it's going, because I will still get a massage and pay a full amount for a massage. It doesn't matter that I might get $20 off 2 of the massages that I have every year. So that's sort of an exploration that I'm going through.
I think it's a really important thing to look at every year, because if I was going to have a baby, I want to make sure that 12 months before, if I don't have the right cover, that I've changed my cover. You might look at it and realise that you've got hip replacement in there because you're on a top cover and you don't need it. It's kind of this thing where I'll pay top quality for some things. I want it to last. I want it to be robust. When it comes to my private health insurance, I don't need to be covered for a whole bunch of things that I'm never going to use. Certainly for me, as someone that's chosen not to have kids, I don't need cover for having a baby or anything to do with that. Yet I do want cover for just if life happens, if I need to go to hospital so I can get my choice of surgeons. I'm wearing glasses at the moment. I don't have optical cover. I don't have extras cover because it's never made sense to me. I've done the sums personally and it's just never made sense. Even though I paid a fortune for physio back in the day, it still didn't quite make sense. I would rather just pay the private health insurance for the cover that I need and then not have extra. But again, it depends on your personal circumstances. So you want to check which fund is right for you and then check which cover's right for you, and you want to do it every year.
Okay, that's good advice. I'm a dancer, so ongoing physio work is sort of a big part of my life, and remedial massage. So I think that's where I must have chosen that back in the day, but I haven't gone back and seen, you know, is this actually still working for me? Because I'm not actually going to the physio every week like I was. You know, it worked for me well. Like my hack was that I was only living in Australia for like 1 or 2 months of the year, so I'd basically max out my year-long physio. When I would come here. Yeah, I'd go 2 months, I'd go hard. But, you know, obviously I'm living here full-time now, so I need to change that.
Well, my hack is pick a date during the year. Maybe it's Feb. Feb's your finance month. And in Feb, you check your mortgage interest rate, you check your credit card, you check your insurances. That's your admin month. Or you can spread it out. And every single month, you just check another thing. And private health insurance is one of those things you just check every year. Am I getting the most out of it? Is it the cover I need? If I've entered a relationship, do we need separate covers? So if we're married, if we're coupled up and it's going to be long term, do we need singles cover, or am I better at this point now getting a family cover, which is potentially cheaper?
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm 32 years old and I work in human resources. I have had private health insurance for about 12 years now. Over the years, I had prioritised having extras cover because I went to the dentist, I need glasses, and then when I got married, I upgraded to top hospital cover as well so that I could have pregnancy and birth included in my cover. A lot of people would say to me, you don't need private health insurance because if anything goes wrong, you'll end up in a public hospital anyway. But for me, it wasn't about the birth, it was about the continuity of care in the lead up and the 9 months that I was in the care of my obstetrician, who was amazing, and he was on call 24/7. In terms of the hospital, I paid $500 excess because that was what was in my health insurance, and it was like a hotel. Maybe it was too good. Well, I had my own room. The food was amazing. I'm telling you, they came around with biscuits, and I had a pedicure, I had a newborn shoot. It was just amazing. I understand I'm really privileged to be in that position to be able to pay for health insurance because it is very, very expensive. But for me, it gave me choice.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm 33 and I work in media. I chose to have the highest cover because growing up I had rheumatoid arthritis, and along with that came a lot of medical problems, lots of visits to doctors, lots of procedures. So I knew that I needed really good health insurance. I needed good cover. And just in my next phase of life that I'm hoping to move into, I'm not sure what kind of complications that will come with, so I just want to be protected. Recently, actually, I had fibroids and endometriosis. When we got into the surgery, I also discovered that I had a cyst, and having that private health insurance gave me so much comfort throughout that whole experience. I was literally able to choose what day I could go into hospital. I went and saw my doctor and he was like, let's do it on Monday. So for me, it gave me enormous peace of mind and just made me feel really looked after. So having top financial cover is definitely a financial commitment. But one thing that I will say, and this is probably the only downside that I've had so far of having private health insurance, is in that last surgery that I recently had, I didn't get back as much money from private health insurance than I thought I would. I thought I would get a lot more, so I was quite out of pocket. That was a bit of a downer, but it was still definitely worth it for me, and I would have done it the same way.
Wellness is such an insidious industry now. It's such a big industry, whether it's juice cleansers to retreats to yoga classes and more. And I know a lot of young women that argue with me that they don't spend money on stuff, but they spend a lot of money on wellness. And they have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, hands up. Two hands are up.
Yeah, the wellness industry are good marketers.
I totally make the mistake of going, I'm going to do this intro pass for this particular yoga studio, but I'll end up doing less than it makes it worth having paid that $80 or whatever. I'll do 2 classes. And I should have just bought a class for $25 ahead. But I got sucked into the deal and this feeling of I'm doing something good for myself. So even if I don't utilize the value, the intention of it is a good intention, and it's for something that's sort of going to help me and my body.
Yeah.
And it's a weird psychology that's going on that ultimately is very expensive.
And we looked in episode 2 about the goals that you have and the life that you want to design. If those savings goals, if that life you want to design is sexy enough, you can still spend on wellness with what's left over. My concern is when you're spending on wellness and you can't do anything else because you feel like you have to. If I'm not paying for juice cleansers, if I'm not paying for yoga, if I'm not paying for the gear as well, therefore I'm not enough or I'm not doing enough. So I think it's just really important to call out that and say, you know what, paying for wellness is not wrong, but it's choosing what's right for you and maybe finding free versions or alternative versions of the other.
It's not going to the yoga class and then buying the overpriced bunch of sage afterwards.
Yes.
Which is what I do. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty drink bottle. Maybe I'll have that. I just get so sucked into the little shelf by the cash till.
Or it's I need to look a particular way as I'm doing my wellness.
Right. Or I'll look at all the yogis. I'm like, I'm Indian, but I'm intimidated by all of you guys in this yoga class. What's happening? I must get new tights.
Yeah. No, I think For me, part of having this conversation about insurance and health, we have to comment on that and just challenge your thinking around, am I paying for wellness, or am I honest? Am I just paying for what I think I should, or what the look of it is giving me, or just what my peers are doing rather than what's actually right for me?
Yeah, do I need a bunch of crystals to charge on the full moon? I mean, am I really going to sit down and do that? And like then all of a sudden I'm discussing, have I given my crystals a saltwater bath every night or something? So yes, I'm basically the target audience for every wellness scheme in Australia.
And I know, your background's Indian, my background's part Chinese. I get that for me, I've never been the traditional path to health. I'm all for let's look at, yes, some of it's, and you go to a Chinese doctor as well. So yes, some of it is traditional Western. I'm so for Eastern medicine as well. But it's not this wellness fad that we feel like we have to be overpaying for. Wills. Part of wrapping up your insurance and your wellness and your health is having a will. And this is, if something was to happen, if life was to happen, who do you want to benefit from what you have? And you might say, you know what, I don't have anything. But all of us have got some stuff, superannuation, and making sure you've filled out. And again, part of your annual check is, who is that binding death nomination going towards? Am I still happy with that? Is it going towards my old partner and we've split up and I'm no longer speaking to them and I don't want them having my super? And then for the will, it's, am I happy for, if I've got a bank account, if I've got some shares, if I've got a property, am I happy for my family to have to kind of battle it out with the state to get access to that? Or can I jump online, download a will kit, or speak to a solicitor and get that sorted?
And this is something that you're saying that young people should be thinking about already. I mean,
Absolutely.
A will is definitely something I have never thought about until this very moment.
Yeah, so you've got superannuation. You've got retirement funds in other countries. So it's having a document that says what is going to happen with them. And inside your super fund, even if you don't have a will, it's filling out that nomination form so that you're saying who you want that money to go to, rather than you have, as I said, what I see way too often is it's being left to the ex-partner, or it's being left to a parent that maybe is, I'm estranged from, or I'm no longer alive, and now it's just icky and awkward and I'm leaving a mess for whoever's behind.
And in the absence of a will, my understanding is that the state takes over your estate. Is that what happens automatically?
That's exactly right. And look, these are great questions to ask in the relationship episode, because I know that we're having a solicitor come in, so we can hit them up. But yes, if you don't do anything, there is still a process, but suddenly that can be a longer process and your wishes may not be followed.
Well, this is a great full circle episode, because it's saying take care of your health, get that insurance so that you're not really going to have to be thinking about a will in a real way, just an academic way for now, because we're keeping ourselves healthy.
Yes, I love it. At the end of each episode, we'll make the penny drop with step-by-step practical exercises to supercharge your finances. You can take back control and understand the action you need to take in order to create the life you want. Have a look at your current health insurance policy if you have one and see what's covered. Do you need more or less? What's the excess like? Do you need a longer waiting period? Are there savings you could make by changing your level of cover, particularly if you're a couple? If you don't have insurance, compare policies on a comparison site and see what cover might be right for you. Consider your age and current state of health to make sure it's appropriate for you. Example, are you planning on falling pregnant in the next 12 months? Do you have a pre-existing health condition? To wrap up today's episode, it's time for Success Confess. This is where we each own up to a win we've had with money in the last week, but also be honest with our money mistakes. A win could be something as simple as deciding to go thrift shopping instead of ordering that dress online. And your confession? Well, as you know, this is a judgment-free zone. The more we can be honest about our money slip-ups, the more we can work towards fixing them.
Alrighty, how are our money wins and confessions going? You always ask me first. I'm going to ask you first this time. What was your win this week, Mel?
So my win is I am all for quality when I'm purchasing because I want to be able to mend and keep. So I bought about 5 or 6 years ago a pair of flats, and I don't own many flat shoes, but I bought a pair of slides and I've just taken them in. They're with the menders at the moment. They're being repaired a second time, so a new sole's being put on so that they're as good as new. And it's my win to say, you know what? If you buy quality, I have a cobbler, I have a alterations person, I have all of that. Yeah.
I wish you were in Melbourne. I need recommendations for your cobbler and your alterer.
But see, if I was shopping at fast fashion, I wouldn't bother mending them. But 5 or 6 years old, second time mending, good as new. It's my win.
Great.
And my money confession, and I know we're talking about insurance this week, I realised hubby and I still have singles cover. We've been married for more than a decade, and every year I go, I should do something about that. So we are overpaying because we both have separate cover. So I need to sort that out.
I have to say that makes me feel a little bit better about myself, the fact that you've made that error.
Yeah. And every time I get it at tax time, the notice, I go, I've got to do something about this. And it's so low on the radar, I need to put in my own advice in place.
I'm going to digress from my confession for a second, because when you get that tax notice from your insurance cover, this is sort of going back to our episode. This is a question I had. What is it that relates to?
So if you're earning over a certain amount of income in Australia, then you'll pay a Medicare levy surcharge. So that private health cover tax statement is something that goes in your tax return so that you're not paying that surcharge. And that's a great point, something we didn't cover earlier, because yes, part of the issue is loading, and the other part is if you or when you're a couple, you might earn no income. Your partner could earn a stack. You'll still both pay the surcharge. So it's being really aware of that. And it's 1% of your income. So it can be not a small amount if you don't have private cover, that is. So you only pay the surcharge if you don't have private cover.
Okay, great. I'm not paying a surcharge. It's good to know. There you go. That's my win.
That's
my win. I just found out that I'm not paying a surcharge because I have private health insurance.
We'll take what we can get. And what's your money confession?
Oh, my money confession is that I bought some stuff online, which was health related. So, sticking with what we have been talking about, but I've got quite a bad neck, and I just went and bought all this arnica cream from a beautiful man in Mullumbimby because I thought it would be really nice and luxe and all of those things. But it was like I could have just gone to the physio and bought the arnica cream that they have. But I went online, I bought the fancy stuff, and I paid for shipping and all of those things. So, yeah, it was just one of those treat yourself moments where I've upsold to myself.
Upsold to yourself. So next time it's head to the physio and grab it while you're there.
Yeah, I'm already there. I'm already getting treated. There's no extra petrol being utilised, all of those things.
Perfect. Thank you for listening to What the Finance. It's time to get good with money. While you're here, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave us a review. Let us know what you think.
Next week, we're going to be talking about something I know nothing about. Surprise, surprise. Shares and investing. I can't wait to see what you're going to teach me, Mel.
Oh, I love shares. Can't wait for that week. This episode of What the Finance was brought to you by Westpac.
Enjoyed the show? Tell us what you think by taking our quick 3-minute survey for your chance to win a $100 gift voucher. Just follow the link in the show notes.